Have you ever stopped to consider what makes a business person successful or what is crucial to their success? Could it be their work ethic? Could it be maybe their connections that they have? Or a host of other reasons? Well, in today's lesson, we're going to be looking at the lesson question, which you can see on the screen, of why were the achievements of the Phoenician, Assyrian, and Persian societies crucial to their success? Let's go ahead and get started. Well, to learn about other ancient Mesopotamian societies, we need to break it down into three separate parts. In the first part, we need to explain the characteristics of the Phoenician society. Secondly, we need to describe the achievements of the Assyrian society. And third, we need to describe the characteristics of the Persian Empire. But before we do any of that, let's take a look at your words to know. Now, the green word is your academic word. That's bureaucracy. Now, the final four words, these are your domain-specific words, or words you'll see throughout this lesson. Those words are empire, monarchy, tribute, Zoroastrianism. Be sure to be on the lookout for these words as we go throughout this lesson. All right, scholars, let's take a look at that lesson question, which is at the top of the screen. It says, why were the achievements of the Phoenician, Assyrian, and Persian societies crucial to their success? Now we're going to answer that question looking at three different societies, as you can see on the screen here. The first is Phoenicia, and we're going to focus on how what was crucial for their success was trade. The second part is going to look at Assyria, and we're going to look at how war was crucial to their success. And finally, in the third part, we're going to look at Persia, of how government was crucial for their success. Let's take a look at a timeline to really give you a graphic representation of when all of these empires existed. But before we do that, take a look at this. An empire is a large group of nations or states under a single ruler, like a king or a queen, or under a government. Now you can see that the Phoenician Empire lasted the entire span from 1500 BCE all the way to 300 BCE. In fact, they existed during the Assyrian as well as the Persian empires as well. But the big takeaway here that I want you to know is that empires gradually, as time went by, became more and more complex for a number of reasons. For example, they may have traded with each other. They may have exchanged ideas. This would further allow them to build upon each other's experiences, making them more and more complex. So just keep that in mind as we go throughout this lesson. All right, scholars, let's take a look at the lesson question, which is at the top of the screen. It says, why were the achievements of the Phoenician, the Assyrian, and Persian societies crucial to their success? In this first part, we're going to look at the society of Phoenicia, and we're going to explore how trade was crucial to their success. Let's go ahead and get started with this first part. Well, it makes sense if we're going to be looking at the Phoenician Empire to first answer the question of, well, where did they exist? And you can see that on the map down here, where all the areas in green is where the Phoenician Empire existed. And you'll notice some of the key cities were Byblos, Tyre, Carthage, as well as Susa as well. Now, the key thing to know about this is that what linked Byblos to Carthage or Susa to Tyre across the Mediterranean Sea was trade. It wasn't by conquest, it wasn't by war. These were independent city-states with an independent king of Byblos or an independent king of Carthage. And if Byblos had something that Carthage wanted, they would trade with each other. Now, the big takeaway here is, like I said, it is through trade that linked them. Now, each of them were based on individual city-states. And like we said, it was a collection of independent city-states. There was not one king who ruled all of the Phoenician Empire. They were linked by trade. However, there were two major city-states that I really want to focus on. The first was Byblos, which was an exporter of papyrus. Do you know what papyrus was the great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of? It was this right here, paper. The first ever paper was created by using papyrus. It was a reed that was smashed down and you could write on it. You can see Byblos right here. The second major city was Tyre. Now they were a major exporter of a red-purple dye. Tyre is right here. Now this red-purple dye, it was very desirable. People all around the Mediterranean region, like in Rome, in Carthage, in Susa, they wanted this dye. All right? Now Byblos it was actually adapted by the Greeks, the word biblos, and it came out to be biblia. Can you recognize that word? Well, it's actually the base of the word Bible, or written work, or a book, or, for example, bibliography. The base of both of those words is from this word, biblos. Now, the big takeaway here is that what linked all of these different city-states together was trade, not conquest. Now, recall from the earlier part of the lesson where you saw the Phoenician Empire was based around the Mediterranean Sea. Well, if they're based around the sea, the Phoenicians, they had to become expert shipbuilders. You can see an example of one of those ships on the right of the screen. In addition to being excellent shipbuilders, they also excelled in many arts and crafts. Now, the key thing about these arts and crafts is that they were traded. Remember, that's what based the Phoenician Empire on, was trade. They traded in metalworking, in glass blowing, as well as carving. Now, the key thing here is that trade linked all of these different people together. But the thing about trading all of these things across great distances, well, you need to keep track of all that trade, of what is being traded to Carthage, what's being brought to Byblos. Well, to help facilitate that trade, the Phoenicians developed the first ever alphabet. And this is possibly the greatest contribution to the world by the Phoenician Empire. You can see an example of the alphabet to the right of the screen. And it is believed that it is developed for trade transactions. So imagine if you're a trader in Tyre and you have 10 cases of that wine, and you have 10 cases of the red dye, and then you also have some cedar wood, and then you also have all these different things, and you're trying to keep track of it all. And then when you arrive to Carthage, you're also supposed to be picking up some things from North Africa, some things that were brought from Europe, some things that are maybe caught in the Mediterranean Sea, and you're supposed to bring that back. Did I trade this for that, this for that? Well, they developed an alphabet to write down all of those transactions. Now, their alphabet was adapted by the Greeks into the Greek alphabet. Now, what's kind of neat is that you had the Phoenician alphabet, which I'll just say is represented by the letter P, was adapted by the Greeks, letter G. The Greek alphabet was adapted by the Romans in Latin, and the Latin alphabet was adapted by English. So our English alphabet can trace its roots back to the Phoenicians. However, what I really want you to know that's really important is that the development of an alphabet is a true sign of a very complex civilization. Great job, scholars. We just finished the first part of the lesson. On to the second part. But before we move on, take a look at that lesson question, which is at the top of the screen. It says, why were the achievements of the Phoenician, the Assyrian, and Persian societies crucial to their success? Now recall that in the first part we talked about the society of Phoenicia and how they were linked by trade. Now in this second part we're going to look at the society of Assyria and how they were linked by war. So let's go ahead and get started with this second part of the lesson. Well, let's begin by looking at where the Assyrian Empire was located. Now, it began in this small area, very close to Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, and gradually, over decades, they expanded all along the Fertile Crescent area. They ruled land along the Nile River in Egypt, along the Euphrates River, as well as the Tigris River, in addition to all of those. Now, the key thing here is that they ruled by war, and they were extremely aggressive in expanding their empire, but using conquest, by using war. And their land that they conquered, it fell under the Assyrian Empire. Now, like we said, they aggressively expanded to conquer its neighbors, and they also ruled by a monarchy. They had one single king in charge of the entire Assyrian Empire. This is much different from the Phoenicians, who had a king in Carthage, they had another king in Byblos, another one in Tyre. So it was much different. The Phoenicians had a very diffuse leadership. Meanwhile, the Assyrians had a very centralized leadership of one king. Now the Assyrians they forced the conquered peoples to pay tribute. Now tribute, which is one of your vocabulary words, that is money, or it's trade goods that are sent to that king to either pay for respect or to pay respect to that king, or to ensure protection. So if you didn't pay the tribute and you were a weaker king, you better believe that the Assyrians would come and force you to pay that by using war. Now the way that they were able to conquer these people is by their military strength. Now, the Assyrian military forces, they ruthlessly used new technologies against those who they conquered. You can see some of those new technologies on the right of the screen. But in addition to those on the right, they used iron swords. Now, iron was much stronger than other metals along that time period. 2, they used lances, which were very strong spears, so they could fight much at a greater distance. 3, they used metal armor, so if they're attacking the enemy who did not have armor, you better believe that when the enemy tried to slash at an Assyrian, that sword that was made of a weaker metal would just pling, would knock right off the armor. And 4, they had battering rams. So even if the Assyrians come after a king, the king sees them coming, he tries to hide behind his big wall, the Assyrians would use a battering ram, which is a massive club that would come against the wall and boom, it would knock down the wall. Now, the key thing to take away from here is that the Assyrians ruled by war, and they were extremely ruthless to the people that they conquered. However, over decades, the people they conquered gradually adapted some of these new technologies that the Assyrians had used against them, and those conquered people actually rose up using the Assyrian technology and defeated the Assyrians using their own technology. So just keep those things in mind as we're looking at the Assyrians. Hey, wonderful job, scholars. We finished the first 2 parts of the lesson. Now you only have 1 more left. Stay with me, but before we move on, let's take a look at that lesson question, which is at the top of the screen. It says, why were the achievements of the Phoenician, the Assyrian, and the Persian societies crucial to their success? Recall that in the first part, we looked at Phoenicia and how they used trade. In the second part, we looked at Assyria and how they used war. That was crucial to their success. Now in this third part, we're going to look at Persia, and we're going to see how they used government to help rule their empire. So let's go ahead and get started with this final part. I want to start by looking at the Persian Empire by teaching you a certain strategy, which is making an inference about the Persian Empire. Now, what an inference is where you use prior knowledge about the Phoenicians and the Assyrians, and you apply that or make connections between that old knowledge to this new knowledge that you're about to learn about the Persian Empire. Now, first, take a look at the Persian Empire. It is an enormous empire. It's on 3 different continents. It's on Europe, Asia, as well as North Africa. Now, if you have an empire that large, what are you going to need to control an empire of that size? Maybe you came up with roads, a strong military, strong trade routes, governors to rule these things, maybe a common system of money. Well, making an inference is you could say, all right, well, the Phoenicians had strong trade routes, and those connected cities like Carthage and Byblos. So you would say, well, they had strong trade. Well, I would think the Persians would need it too. Exactly. Now go on to the Assyrians, where you would say, well, the Assyrians ruled by war. They had really strong military. So I would think the Persians would need to have a strong military. Perfect. That's exactly it. That's making an inference, pulling prior knowledge and applying it to something new. And in fact, the Persians had to use both trade as well as a strong military to control their empire. But what they used that was much different was the government, a strong government system. Now, what we're going to be starting our view and what we're going to start by looking at is the first ruler called Cyrus II, or Cyrus the Great, who you can see on the right of the screen. Now, he began conquering the region in 550 BCE, and he used advanced military tactics, just like can you guess which one? It was the Assyrians, just like the Assyrians. However, unlike the Assyrians, who were very harsh to these people, Cyrus respected local religions, local customs, and local peoples. This was a huge difference between the Persians and the Assyrians, was that instead of crushing the other people, Cyrus would defeat them in battle and then respect those local religions. However, his son didn't quite do this, and he did not follow Cyrus's example, and the ruler after Cyrus's son was Darius I, who you can see on the right. Now, he actually seized the throne in 522 BCE. And he further expanded the empire, and he did a number of really great things. He established efficient road systems. He established postal systems, and he also established coinage. Now, coinage is really important because if you have an empire of that size, you need one system of currency. Imagine living in the United States where each state had its own money. So if you go and visit Washington, D.C., you need Washington, D.C. dollars. But then you cross the river into Virginia. Then you need to change that out, go to Virginia dollars. Then you want to go to the mountains in West Virginia, change your money again, change it to West Virginia dollars. Trade, commerce, all of that would slow to a halt if you didn't have a common theme, a common currency, which is why in the United States we have the United States dollar. Now, in addition to all this, Darius also organized government into different provinces, and each with its own governor. Let's take a closer look at the road system that he developed. And the road system was called the Royal Road. Now, it went from the capital here in Susa all the way to Cyrus, which you can see. Now, this road system was 1,600 miles long. Now, that's equivalent to having a road from Washington, D.C., all the way across the Appalachians, through the Great Plains, all the way to Denver, Colorado. But recall that this road was built without construction material. It was built with all hands and perhaps some beasts of burden. So that's the key thing. But the Royal Road, it also had a number of key effects as well. Let's say, for example, he wanted to get news, a royal decree, from Susa to Sardis, where instead of taking local roads, he could take one royal road and his information, his decree would get there much faster. Imagine driving along, let's say if you're trying to cross California without using an interstate or driving local neighborhood roads where you can only go 25 miles an hour. It would go much, much slower. The same thing is true on the Royal Road. The Royal Road allowed for communications to travel faster. It allowed for military units to travel faster. And it further allowed Darius to control his empire because he could get news out and news back much, much faster. Another way he controlled his empire was by establishing a royal or an imperial bureaucracy. Now, Darius set up, like we said, the bureaucracy to help the empire run efficiently. Now, a bureaucracy is one of your vocab words. Now, a bureaucracy is a structure of government which includes a large group of people who work to help it function and, like we said, run efficiently. So here's how it works. You would have Darius here, but his empire is enormous. So what Darius did is he would divide his empire up into various provinces. And what would happen is that each province would have a different governor that he would appoint. So they owe their job back to Darius. Like we said, he appointed the governor to each province. So what he would do is he appointed them, but each of these governors, they all owed their allegiance back to Darius. So each of them would rule how Darius told them to rule, and if they didn't, Darius could find out very quickly because he had that royal road to get information back and forth from his province. But the big takeaway here is that the Persian Empire, they used an efficient form of government to rule rather than just trade like the Phoenicians and rather than just war like the Assyrians. Just like the Phoenicians as well as the Assyrians, the Persian religion at the beginning of it was polytheistic. However, around 600 BCE, founded by Zoroaster, who you can see right here, the Persians adopted the religion of Zoroastrianism. Now, Zoroastrianism was a religion that was based, that said that the earth was in a battle between good and evil, and it introduced new ideas about heaven as well as hell. Now, another key takeaway here is that this just shows that the Persians, because of this complex religion, were a very advanced civilization. Let's use a timeline to look at these ancient empires. Now, recall that the Phoenician Empire, it ruled all during the time period of the Assyrians as well as the Persians. However, recall that the Persian Empire, it ruled the land of the Phoenicians as well as the Assyrians. It had conquered most of that territory. Now let's take a step back and look at a timeline of ancient empires, but all throughout Mesopotamia. Notice that the Sumerian civilization was the first civilization in Mesopotamia. It set the groundwork. And in that same area of Mesopotamia were the other empires like the Babylonians, the Phoenicians, Assyrians, and Persians, and they all built on each other's achievements.